Willie D Live.
What's up, family? In case you've been asleep at the wheel, there's a bill floating around Congress that is proposing to allow Donald Trump, your president, to serve a third term. Yeah, fam. And they're dead serious. Now remember, Trump likes to joke about serving a third term, but he also recently said, I'm never joke. I'm never joking. I'm always serious. Yeah. So even when you think he might be joking and he gives that little nervous laugh behind it, family, they're seriously trying to position this dude to get a third term. So don't be just tripping on this, what's going on in the midterms. They trying to get this guy to be your forever president. Yeah. I want you to check out this story in the New Hampshire Bulletin. And I'll just read a brief excerpt. President Donald Trump is not joking about a third term. Since this shocking and constitutionally tenuous admission, pundits and journalists from both sides of the political aisle have been abuzz with commentary. The short answer is to whether Trump can be elected for a third term is no. The 22nd Amendment expressly forbids a two-term president from being elected to a third term. So there, discussion over. Challenge to long-held constitutional beliefs averted. No need to discuss it further. However, this issue is not that simple. In fact, it is rather complex. Language matters when it comes to the Constitution. The 22nd Amendment's use of the term elected precludes Trump from being elected for a third term, but it does not create an eligibility for unelected paths to the presidency. Looking at you, Gerald Ford, as Trump provocatively stated, there are methods to achieve such an outcome. There are methods to achieve such an outcome. Now, let's go over and see what Congress.gov is saying about the 22nd Amendment, because this is more important than what any journalist might write, right? Let's see here. Boom. House Joint Resolution 29, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times. The proposed amendment specifies that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times for any additional term after being elected to 2 consecutive terms, or more than twice after having served as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president. For example, if a president died after serving for 1 year and the vice president became the president for the remaining 3 years of the term, that person may subsequently be elected president no more than 2 times. Currently, under the 22nd Amendment to the United States Constitution, a person may not be elected president more than twice. Additionally, no person who has been president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president may be elected president more than twice. So essentially what they're saying is, Trump is saying there's ways around it, right? So this clearly states that, whatever way around it you think, it ain't gonna work out, because he can try to run as vice president and then somehow get his running mate to fall back and then allow him to take over. He can do that day one if he wanted to. But there will be lawsuits all over the place. And the popular vote says that not even the Supreme Court justices would allow something like that to happen. But the Supreme Court justices, that's not even his biggest hurdle. I want you to check out the biggest hurdle here. So the 22nd Amendment, here's the main barrier. It explicitly says that no one can be elected president more than twice. It was ratified after Franklin D. Roosevelt won 4 terms. It's clear and leaves very little wiggle room legally. Courts are unlikely to reinterpret it in a way that allows a 3rd term. And this is just an astronomical hurdle to get over here. Watch this. To change the rule, you need a constitutional amendment, which is extremely hard. It will require 2/3 of the House and Senate to pass. That's 2/3 of the House and Senate. But check this out. They're also going to need 3/4 of the United States to ratify. That level of agreement is extremely rare in today's political climate. In other words, it ain't gonna happen, fam. It ain't gonna happen. Even beyond Democrats, there are many Republicans who are not comfortable with that change. They don't want to open that door, because if they open that door for Trump, that door is open for other presidents who they may not have as much liking for, right? And that's because, they can't control them and get them to steal from the people as much. They may not be able to get them to steal as much. So you want to get them out of, hey man, 2 terms and then you out. So there are many Republicans who would probably vote against that, So removing them could set a precedent for all future presidents, right? So not just Trump. So that support, is not as unified as people assume. So legal and constitutional challenges would include the Supreme Court of the United States, which would almost certainly step in. Most constitutional scholars believe those workarounds wouldn't hold up. So, and then you have public opinion and political risk. Even a lot of voters who support Trump, they might hesitate with changing that rule. But then again, Trump has a cult, and it appears that they don't really think for themselves. As long as they can have Trump, they'll have any kind of Trump they can get. And they seem like the type of people that will cross that bridge when they get there. Like, we got Trump, and that's all that matters. And whatever happens after that, we don't care, because, hey, we got Trump. And, if he leaves the country in shambles, so be it. It was good while it lasted, But then you have to also consider the historical norms. Since George Washington stepped down after his 2 terms, that's the way things have been historically. And so for the 22nd Amendment to change all of a sudden, and go against it. But a lot of things have gone against tradition since Trump has been in office, So I don't think, a lot of people say breaking it would be seen as a major shift in power, but I don't. They've broken so many other rules already. They've broken so many traditions already. I mean, even dude putting his stank face on money. He's put his face on the currency. He's the first to ever do that. Usually you have to be dead to have your name put on U.S. money. But, they're putting this dude's face on money. I'm glad that I don't use cash anymore, because I absolutely would not have a single note in my pocket with his face on it. In fact, whether he was going for his face at first, but then they started saying, well, we're just going to use his signature. So starting, I think, I forgot the month, but they're supposed to start using his signature on the $100 bill. At least $100 bill. I'm not sure about the other ones, but I know I saw the $100 bill with his signature on it. So they're supposed to start using his signature on U.S. currency. But if they get away with that, usually that signature includes the Treasury's, the U.S. Treasury's signature, a Treasury signature. So now they're going to use his signature. That's a gateway to use his face on the currency. That's all that is. So, but let me tell you something, fam. In reality, if someone is serious about a third term, they're not just fighting an election, they're fighting the Constitution. And the Constitution is extremely hard to change. If those uncivilized mutts who wrote the Constitution didn't do nothing else right, perhaps they did that right. No more talk.